Hello and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions or comments to our Twitter page at Mason Roundtable or on the Facebook event page for episode 131, The Morgan Affair. Dun, dun, dun. As for me, my name is John Ruark, past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957, in academic Fairfax, Virginia. And I'll hand it off to Robert Johnson for his introduction.
Hi, Robert Morgan Johnson here. Just kidding. Robert Johnson here, past master, Waukegan Lodge 78, current secretary, and all kinds of other goofy stuff. That's it. Back to you, John.
Thank you, Robert. Juan, who are you?
Hello, everybody. Juan Sepulveda, host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast and a proud member of Orange Blossom Lodge, number 80 in sunny Kissimmee, Florida.
Thank you, Juan. Last but not least, Jason Richards.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Jason Captain Morgan Richards. The M stands for Morgan, right? Not at all. Senior Deacon of Acacia Lodge, number 16, in good old Clifton, Virginia. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Jason. And Nick is off doing masonry tonight, so he sends his
doing masonry so hard right now.
Priorities, bro. Come on. So with that, let's go to Masonic news. This week, we were hoping to have an interview of the 5 hosts of the Masonic Roundtable published by now. However, the hosting website has gone down, but stay tuned for, I believe, as early as September 1st on freemasoninformation.com. There will be an interview posted there, and to follow on phoenixfreemasonry.org.
Phoenixmasonry.org.
What did I say? Phoenixmasonry.org. Very good, very well written interview in a Rolling Stones-esque style. Really covers a little back of the history of how we got started and where we're going. So check that out.
So it's cool because it's done by Elena Yamas, who is the curator of the Phoenix Masonry Museum, and she's just a fount of knowledge when it comes to Masonic artifacts and history. And she geeks out about old Masonic stuff like more than most of the Masons I know. So it's really cool that she approached us and wanted to do an interview with us. It's neat.
Very, very cool.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Juan.
She's incredibly nice and very respectful of, the way she handles everything. We've known of her for a long time, and now we finally had a chance to basically get to meet her virtually, and it is so nice. We've had so many, and I say this, because it's a female that's related to Freemasonry, and you have a lot of brothers that are like, oh, what is this? Keep it away. And every female we've dealt with
No,
related to
he's great. Karen Kidd is great.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not here to try to take your stuff away.
No. For the most part, they just want you to leave them alone, actually.
Channeling my inner Nick Johnson, in 50 years, they're all going to be in. The natural order of things. But that's Nick's opinion, not my own. Also, moving on to the next topic is the upcoming, in less than about a month. Let me find my link here. Where did my link go? No, the Mid-Atlantic Convocation of Academic Lodges. That's right, the Patriot Lodge, number 1957, is also hosting with the Colonial Lodge, number 1821, a convocation of academic lodges in the D.C. area. So what is that? It is an area for lodges that are based on the university scheme to come and share lessons learned on how they're standing up, help out other academic lodges stand up, and share some education as well. We'll have a couple tracks. Our keynote speaker is the founder and creator of the university scheme in England, so we've got him in town for that. There will be some dinner and mixers at Gadsby's Tavern in Old Town Alexandria, and we'll have a couple of educational programs in the afternoon, to include one done by yours truly. So if you're there, that's where you'll hear some hot off the press information about Masonic statistics based on the survey that was taken this summer. So stay tuned for that. More to come. What have we got next? We have a very interesting article about what's going on in the Grand Lodge of Arkansas from Brother Chris Hodap. On his blog this week, he talked about, and now Jason's going to have to help me with this pronunciation. The Grand Lodge of Arkansas of...
It's Yezhovshchina.
Yezhovshchina. What is Yezhovshchina, Jason?
So Yezhovshchina is the colloquialism given to the Stalinist purges from the 1930s, roughly about 1936 to 1938. Stalin rose to power, defeating his rival Leon Trotsky, and basically he got more and more neurotic throughout his reign, but he ended up offing about 8 million of his own people, and the head of the NKVD secret police was named Yezhov. So Yezhovshchina literally translates to the happenings or occurrences of Yezhov, who was Stalin's lead man in conducting the purges.
So did Yezhov literally disappear? Is that what's trying to be shown here in these photos?
So the Soviets, they're the Soviet leadership was very interesting in the sense that they did have a habit of going back and doctoring photos to remove those who had fallen out of favor with the Communist Party, and that's what we're seeing here as that example. I don't know if that's Yezhov himself or not. I'd have to do more research on that.
But what does this have to do with Freemasonry? Grand Lodge of Arkansas is doing what this week?
They are removing photos of Grand Lodge officers from their websites.
So removing photos is no bad thing. We have poor Grand Lodge websites run all the time.
And they're removing Facebook pages completely.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yes, and they're also removing their own Grand Lodge officers.
Mic drop.
Yes. I think one of them was suspended for 25 years, and the other was suspended for 30 years. And according to Chris, they were suspended for a certain period of time because they can only appeal it if they're suspended indefinitely. So basically, both of these guys are going to be suspended until after they pass away.
See, from a Masonic law perspective, that is such a...
It's a dick move.
It's an unnice thing to do because of exactly that someone took the time to figure out what's the worst way that I can hold someone up in their Masonic career. And it's not to expel them. It's not to indefinitely suspend them. It's to suspend them for a very, very, very long time by order of edict. Juan?
Suspend them until after they will have passed away.
But here's the deal, right? I mean, most of the time, edicts expire with the Grand Master. So the next Grand Master might be whatever, the next Grand Master, but come 3 or 4 down the line, one of them might just be the guy who says, can't wait till I'm there, can't wait till I'm there, and then all of a sudden, Patrick Carr, you can come back. Sorry about that.
That's like someone trying to talk back to Hillary and then they end up dead.
Wow.
Cool, man. You know, we caught some flack last time because we called Donald Trump crazy.
So
that's true.
Don't say anything bad about Hill Dog, or you might end up like the Yeshavina.
You know, I'm telling you right now, you said the thing. Next week, maybe no John Ruark. Maybe it's, as usual, I'm your host, Jason Richards, and when somebody says, where's John Ruark? Who?
Never heard of it.
No. Raced.
Nick Johnson?
Someone broke into his house and stabbed him in the neck.
No, he doesn't exist.
And didn't...
Back to
Didn't take any of his personal possessions.
All right, Juan, what have you got?
Take you in a wagon to Canada. That's how we do this.
We will pay John $500 to leave the country.
Yes, we're gonna come bail you out and bail you out.
We will bail you out of jail and then pay you to leave. More on that when we talk about William Morgan, though.
Can't wait. Now, I didn't hear the word Photoshop anywhere there. The purging that you referred to in the, let me look at the word again. Yeshofshina.
Yezhovshina.
Yeshofshina.
Moving on.
Well, for the brothers that are just listening, on the blog, there are some examples of photos that have one subject in this photo almost photoshopped out of it. So it's the purging of people is not just removing them from office, but also removing any memory of them. Any part
I
of
said that.
No, you didn't. Wow.
Yeah, I said that like 5 minutes ago, man.
Oh, you did? I'm repeating it in Spanish. Am I not saying it in Spanish?
Oh, no, okay.
For our Latin listeners. On to our next topic. We have our last thing to lighten up the mood, aside from having most of the Grand Line officers erased from existence. Our favorite satire site, The Past Bastard.
Your favorite satire
My
site.
favorite satire site.
Jesus.
Every Mason's favorite satire site, because guess what? Masons like anything with a square and compass. The Onion comes along, slaps a square and compass on it, and it's their favorite. It's just the way it happens.
Is there more than one? Because technically it could be yours as well if there's only one.
True, yeah, there's only one, so that I know of. Well, no, John Nagy has come out with a few.
Yeah,
a few good ones. But this week, a great one that came out was AMD in talks to develop a Royal Arch Go to increase interest in membership, where you can whip out your smartphone, go catch some degrees, and then pay with credit card to get a link to a YouTube video to watch the degrees. That's
by the northern jurisdiction.
Oh, there you go. That's pretty creative. As a techie guy, I could kind of see that happening. I'm not saying I'd do it, but
the infrastructure is already there. I mean,
well, that's the scary part of satire. When you first read it, it's like, oh my god, that's so ridiculous, and then a little bit later, it's like, oh, you know what, that's doable. And now,
you know, the response to these articles is really funny. I don't know if you guys ever like catch it, like how many times people just get baited and just start going off. I'm reminded of the time I was 13 or 14 years old watching Saturday Night Live, and my grandmother in The Lazy Boy wakes up in the middle of a Saturday Night Live commercial for like some game where it blows up your living room, right? And I remember my grandma, you know, she wakes up and she said, "Well, who would buy that?" And I said, "Nana, it's just Saturday Night Live." You know, and it's the same thing with a lot of folks. These things catch them right up on top. They're like, "Oh, who would participate in Royal AMD Go?"
I just wonder if they don't know what satire is.
I mean, it's on the site. It says satire, so I would hope they get it.
Well, but if they don't know what satire is,
right? Like maybe they just don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past some people that comment, because it's like, oh, it's a satire right there. I mean, you really taking this serious?
So I don't care that it's satire. I care that it's poorly written satire.
Yeah.
Grammar Nazi.
Almost every single article they do is like rife with grammatical errors. It's annoying. Like, get a copy editor.
Good stuff. Okay, moving on to off of Masonic news and on to everyone's favorite trivia game show of the Masonic Monday question.
On Tuesday?
On Tuesday.
Oh, hey. Whoa, that was scary. I've never heard that before, even though you've done that for like 3 months now. Hey, everybody. Jason Richards filling in for Nick Johnson for the Masonic Monday question on Tuesday. So, we will get started. So last week, congratulations to William Nair, Willem Cosson, Chris Boyce, Mark Robbins, Christopher Croteau, Jonathan Primo, Gary Thomas, Blake Miles, Leach, Mike Hambrecht, Nick Tamila, Ed Potter, Joey Boyer, Garrett Anderson, Michael Duchette, Helio Lopez da Costa, Thomas O'Ryan, Michael Laidlaw, Steve Chappelle, no relation to Dave Chappelle, and that we know of, and Scott Gilligan. Congratulations. The answer was Count Alessandro Cagliostro, the nom de plume, or Giuseppe Balsamo. And the question was really long, so if you want to see what the question was, go back to our Facebook page from last week's episode and look it up there. So this week we're going to be talking about the shrine. So shrinedom, a subject we rarely touch on in these MMQs, has also helped to spread and strengthen Freemasonry globally, including this country. Osmond Shrine, the shrine temple located in St. Paul, Minnesota, hosted the first ceremonial or shrine initiation in this country. Name the country. When you have the answer, send it to masonicmonday@gmail.com. Don't forget to include your lodge name, number, with the hashtag, Where's Nick? Back to you, John.
Thank you, Jason. Moving into tonight's topic, we are going to talk about the Morgan Affair. This has been on our backlog for quite some time, and here we are. We will separate kind of the Anti-Masonic Party that we've alluded to in previous episodes and focus on just the precursor to those events, the actual Morgan Affair itself. So, who was William Morgan? Well, William Morgan was born in 1774 in Culpeper, Virginia, so not too far away from the great Northern Virginia that Jason and I are from, just a short drive away. Is a poor laborer, goes into the operative stonemason trade, and is really taking on his father's profession, but as an operative stonemason, that comes in handy later on as he tries to get into the speculative guild system that we'll talk about later. And really likes the drink, really likes the sauce. So he is kind of a non-educated, works with his hands, man of the land, and tries to start some businesses in Richmond and really doesn't do so well there. Then along comes the War of 1812, and he claims that not only did he fight bravely in the War of 1812, but was promoted to the rank of captain. While there were several William Morgans found in the Virginia records, none of them actually achieved the rank of captain. So his later claims to be a Captain William Morgan were basically found to be dubious, and no, he is not the Captain Morgan on the rum bottle.
Or is
That would make a great story, though. So after coming back from the War of 1812, in 1819, marries his wife, the daughter of a Methodist pastor. He is 45 years old at the time, and it's later found through reverse math that she is actually 15 years old at this time, which is still a little young, even for that time frame. But basically, it was written that he basically was robbing the cradle in other testimonials about him. So it not only does it build to his character that he's a drunk, that he's just a man of the land, uneducated, trying to just do poor things like lie about him being promoted to captain. He's also just robbing the cradle all along. So you can see this is building up
Ad hominem.
a very good case built up against the character of this man well before he tries to infiltrate Masonry.
Now the question is, was that case built against him before or after his death? Because
So-
hindsight is 20/20, and it could be a defamation.
But George Washington was perfect. He never did anything wrong.
Now he chopped down the cherry tree.
And he
Never.
was irregular.
Yes. No, but he was perfect. So, yes, of course, the source that I'm getting a lot of my information from is from an 1874 published compilation of testimonies. So, yes, hindsight being what it was, we may have a skewed version of history because we know no one writes anything that's libelous. Yes, in that time frame especially. But what does that have to do with Masonry? In 1821, he packs up the family, his wife, and goes up to upstate New York, leaves Virginia. And one thing I found interesting in this summary that I was reading, that in 1821, he's drinking out on a night on the town with some friends, staggers back to his hotel, and ends up leaving a copy of an 1814 English Masonic exposé in his hotel room, as well as a copy of a German translation of the Bavarian Illuminati rituals. And so this was known to be found and given back to him. So he had in his possession, sometime around 1821, copies of some Masonic secrets / exposés.
But exposés were pretty commonplace back then. I mean, all the way starting back with Pritchard's exposé in the 1730s.
Mm-hmm. So it's now, are we trying to show intent or just extreme negligence? That's really what we're trying to get to here.
Right, and like as Jason was saying, anybody who's actually gone into any Masonic library, you might find certain books that don't even look like they would be exposés. They're some really odd titles. You'll find exposés on Masonry that were legitimately published with a title not bearing anything in mind when it came to Masonry. It would say, I mean, just out of a hat, it would be named, Anatomy of
The soul.
or something.
Yeah.
Or it could be like Why Curtains Are Black, and you open it up and it's about Masonry. I mean, right now one of the books that is out there, it's the history of the Black Hawk War, is actually the Royal Arch book for the Black Hawk degree. So yeah, the titles are weird. They were so out.
Intentional? Do you think that's almost to throw people off the scent? Or
What's that?
do you think that's intentional? Why do you think the titles are so off from what the content is?
Oh, I think it's definitely intentional. I think it's just like, in case the book ends up somewhere, it's destroyed without interest.
So I think it's interesting that John mentions that they found translations of the Bavarian Illuminati rituals. The Bavarian Illuminati would have probably just recently kind of perished, at least in Bavaria at that point, because they were only around for about 13 years, so they got wiped out or kind of dissolved by the late 1700s. But I find it interesting to think that actually their rituals had spread across to America by that point. It's another thing to ask Joe Wages about.
I know that George Washington had in some of his letters addressed the Illuminati, not in a conspiracy kind of way. Like there's some real letters where he actually addresses their presence in the colonies, or at least their influence.
Interesting. Well, they were founded 1774, somewhere around there.
I want to say 1776, but
1776, yes, that's right.
so this is what's that? About 30 years after this time frame. To interject where we're getting ready to come to, Morgan may have received some of the degrees of Masonry in Virginia around this time. So I think that's kind of interesting that there are no records that he was ever made a Master Mason anywhere. But They think that he may have received up to the EA degree in Virginia, but either way, he convinced a lodge at Rochester, New York, that he had received all 3 degrees, and with the success, went to lodge and eventually convinced a Royal Arch chapter at Leroy to get the Royal Arch degree in 1825. So the source that I'm reading says that he not only, got to be known as a Mason by sneaking in with knowledge that he had received the 3 degrees of Masonry. The Grand Lodge system really wasn't as well established like we can do now and check on the status of a brother very quickly. But
well, and interestingly enough, the Royal Arch degree is the only degree. So even the EA degree, there are rumors and according to time immemorial, but we don't actually have documentation to that effect.
This guy had to be pretty slick in his credit, because not only did he have to fake his way through 3 degrees of craft masonry, that's enough for anyone, but then to fake through at least 6 degrees or so of the York Rite as well.
I don't know how slick it was, dude. I mean, let's be honest. How many times could you have just gone to a lodge where you know the signs or whatever, they don't check you at the door, and maybe it's a degree, and let me put it to you this way. You could probably read the degrees and know them better than sometimes the people putting them on. So I don't think it would be that hard to fake your way into a Masonic lodge anywhere, even today.
Fair point?
I think especially today.
Yes, I was going to say that we can actually operate Grand Lodge to Grand Lodge very swiftly, and then I had to retract that statement, because if anyone's tried to go through the official correspondence, even with email, it's not a fast process.
Yeah.
So we do know that he did get the Royal Arch degree around 1825 in Leroy chapter. So when a new Royal Arch chapter was proposed in his old town, he tried to be on the petition to be a charter member, but objection was made to his being included, and he was basically kind of kicked out of that. So there's still a sneaking suspicion about his legitimacy.
So they actually had to draft a new charter or new petition with his name omitted, and sources speculate that about this time people were starting to catch on to the fact that he fabricated a lot of his Masonic credentials. But again, a lot of that's unconfirmed.
So there's a sneaking suspicion. This is 1825. Now we're getting into early 1826. The next year, he moves over to Batavia. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. Batavia, New York, which is a seat of Western New York that actually has a lot of religious movements going on, to include Mormonism at this time frame. And so he's moving out there to kind of get established, and this is when he starts hatching up his plan in 1826. He tells 3 confidants that he's going to sneak in, write a book, and expose the secrets of the Freemasons. And he only lets 3 guys know, makes them swear a written oath that they will not tell anyone else that he's about to do this conspiracy, which is funny because now we're still finding out about it today. So someone broke that oath right there.
And they swore the oath in writing.
Right. It's illegal.
I solemnly swear that I will not talk about William Morgan's Masonic libel book that he's about to publish.
So time moves on,
Anyway.
and by that summer, 1826, he publishes a prospectus, or basically a pamphlet, a flyer, that, hey, I'm about to publish a book that will expose Freemasonry secrets. I think that was really the first step of his undoing, because if it's good press, but at the same time, if you're trying to do something that's going to take a lot of people off, why would you advertise it ahead of time? But he did. And so the Masonic community as a whole starts to get a little edgy. He gets thrown in jail, on the 25th of July, 1826, due to some debts that he owes, and some of his allies, I think some of which includes the ones that swore an oath to him, have to bail him out. But this leaves a bad taste in their mouth, especially because of what he's about to do. So they take a share of his book sales as collateral, which I think is kind of creative. So they're going to get a cut regardless.
I wanted to add that in some of the sources that I found, they described the newspaper editor that wanted to partner up with him. His name was David Miller, and they speculate that he received the entered apprentice degree in Masonry, but for some reason was not allowed to continue further. So people kind of attribute his willingness to help him in this dark endeavor to the resentment that he might have felt for not being allowed to progress in the degrees of Masonry.
Yep.
So he's still getting set up with David Miller to establish a print shop in Miller's office, and starts printing in late summer, August, September time frame, after he gets bailed out of jail. But there's a couple correspondence between him and his allies around August 27th, where he's starting to feel like there's something going on against him. He's kind of getting a little paranoid in his writings back to his allies. And by September 8th, around 40 to 50 supposed Masons go and rush his printing shop and start burning the place down. Unfortunately, only part of it catches a fire, and it's able to be put out rather quickly. This is, of course, David Miller's office, and so they're certainly making it clear that we don't want this in our town. It is later said that the Batavia Lodge and chapter spoke out against such acts and offered a reward for those involved with that crime.
Now, it's not confirmed that those were Masons who actually set fire to the shop, and actually some assert that it was David Miller himself who set the fire to kind of fan the flames, as it were, against the Freemasons, and help sell more copies of the book as it was printing. But again, that's never been confirmed either. Unfortunately, with the story of William Morgan, there's just so much that we don't know.
So then, later on, on September 11th, 1826, he's arrested for an alleged non-payment of a loan and for stealing a shirt and a tie. And he tries to get out of it, and unfortunately, due to the way that the New York law was written, he could be held in debtor's prison until the amount was paid off, which would have made it even more difficult to get out and publish his book. So he is jailed at this point in September, based off of a loan again.
What are the chances? I mean, like, let's look at today. I mean, could you go, hey, I couldn't pay for my shirt and tie, so I got to spend the weekend in county.
It does smell a little weird that, just according to New York law, hey, we're going to throw you in the clink for borrowing a shirt.
There was a stupid app that was out a few years ago. It was like America's Dumb Laws, right? Like, it's illegal to walk down the street in Louisiana with eggs in your pocket. These kind of laws, they're so dumb. Even back then, I almost wonder if these laws were considered not, there you go, it's great. Dumb.
That's the website, dumblaws.com.
Oh, really? Oh, I need to.
You can go find your state and check it out.
You look at some of this stuff and you wonder, there had to, if Masons did have any part in this, they're going to be like, oh, well, let's look through our state's dumb laws and get one of our brothers who's a police officer to arrest him. I don't know. We'll get into the conspiracy soon enough, but I digress.
So yes, so that's what got him caught. So he has to spend the night on September 11th in jail, and then the following night, September 12th, around 7 p.m., that's when the abduction starts. So do you guys want to pick up the story from there? We do know that there were 4 assailants, or 4 suspects, and a driver of the carriage. We do know a gentleman by the name of Cheesebro, Lawson, and Sawyer, and there's a Dr. Foster, in air quotes there, because we still don't know his true identity to this day, but we do know the other 3 due to their testimony later on.
Wait, what was the driver of the carriage's name?
Though it should have no bearing at all, his name, the driver of the carriage, who was just paid for service like a taxi or an Uber of the day, the driver's name, Hiram Hubbard.
Dun, dun, dun.
So,
At this point, wait, hold on a second.
So wait, Scientology and Masonry coming together?
Yeah. So, at this point in the audio version, if you guys are listening to this audio, I have inserted the current affair thing. Current affair.
nice.
But that's one of the versions. Another version is that he was provided a horse or a modes of escape, so he wasn't escorted out. He just left.
Interesting.
Mhm.
So that's where the facts start to get a little fuzzy here. Either way,
The facts have been fuzzy throughout this entire story, John.
There are no facts. They're just fuzzies.
fact or fuzzy. So either way, he gets bailed out and escorted out by 4 gentlemen and a driver, and eventually, ends up in Canada? Is that how the story goes? Robert, I know
Nobody sees him ever again.
you've heard some conflicting stories about the Canada story.
Right, yeah. So essentially, they say that he gets in this carriage and they take him off, and one account is that they throw him off Niagara Falls, and another account is they take him out into a boat into the Niagara, and they just kick him off the boat, and he drowns. Of course, listeners to the Masonic Radio Theater from back in the day, a couple of years ago, we had some great voice talent. This guy named John Ruark was the protagonist, and the story in that was that they made him go and disappear into Canada, never to show his face in the United States again. What's crazy is, years, I think maybe it was 2 years later or a year later, some period of time happens where a body washes up on shore.
Right.
It was by most accounts 1 year and 1 month. So we're talking October 1827.
Mm-hmm.
So a body washes up on shore, and people suspect that it's this gentleman. I wouldn't call him a gentleman, but Morgan. His body washes ashore, proving he was surely murdered by the Freemasons. However, what did not make the rounds in the papers of the day, because it's not as sensational, is the fact that this gentleman was actually ID'd by another woman who her husband went missing, and she ID'd the clothing.
Yeah, Timothy Monroe of Canada.
So the case, the book is still open. There's no body, and interestingly enough, of all the sources in the world, Wikipedia had an interesting blurb that I hadn't read anywhere, which was that perhaps Morgan's wife later became one of Joseph Smith's wives.
I read that too.
Yeah.
And apparently she was brought to look at this body that was found sometime later, and instantly she said, no, that's not him, because there was a difference in height, in body features, so she instantly said, no, that's not him.
Yeah,
But
and you're gonna know William Morgan. If you guys look at a picture of the guy, that guy he looks like Vigo the Carpathian coming out of the painting. That dude, not Not look at that. If you
Looker.
Got a forehead that goes for miles.
it's a tracing board.
So actually, interestingly enough, I had read that too, Juan, and then I'd also read where she actually later changed her story.
Whoa.
Said, no, it was him. It was him. It was him all along.
Yeah. Now
That
see,
book deal.
when exactly. When she changes her story, what was in her bank account?
That's a good question.
Yeah, but I wonder, like, was there any pressure from anybody? You know, like, are you sure? Are you sure? Come look at it again.
Really sure, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, and then this leads to one of the things with Masonry is that this Morgan affair literally leads to Grand Lodges shutting down.
So the worst period of anti-Masonic sentiment we've ever had in this country.
Exactly. The Grand Lodge of Illinois, we've had 2 of them, and most people just attribute, they say, oh, we must have lost the first one in the Chicago fire, or there's all these speculations. But yes, the Grand Secretary, and the Grand Secretary tells us, we just didn't survive the Morgan affair. And so we started a new Grand Lodge later.
That's amazing.
Wow.
It's a Mason.
It's a Mason. So that's the story, guys. We don't know what happened after that. It's a lot of what-if scenarios. Obviously, a lot of blowback as far as what's happened to the anti-Masonic sentiment that still continues to this day. And but one can dream that maybe some Masons couldn't subdue their passions and did off the guy, or maybe he lived off in the happy farm in Canada and just had all his debts closed and married someone new and lived happily ever after. We don't know. What do you guys think happened?
Well, there's one thing that I want to point out, though. There's a lesson in this for us to pay attention to. If Masonry keeps a stance of not fighting against the negative that surfaces in the media or in social media or on the internet, then it could escalate to change the feeling of the entire nation against Masonry. See, here we don't know if it was Masons that actually took the life of William Morgan or not, but it was enough of an effect that the entire nation basically was affected. Masonry basically had to go back into secrecy, discretion, because we even had a political party called the Anti-Masonic Party, and we cannot have a stance that we just don't argue with people. There has to be a voice, and that's partly what we do here in the Masonic Roundtable. It's not enough for us to know the truth. I think in many instances it's important that we articulate the truth in a way that it's going to counteract the negative effect of the lies and conspiracies that abound.
Mm-hmm. So my last question for all of you would be, do you think this could happen today? And I'll answer my own question with, didn't we just talk about the Grand Lodge of Arkansas? It's not quite that bad, but certainly people are dropping left and right. Juan, what do you think?
I think it's possible. I mean, people are people, and like I talk about in Applied Freemasonry, we keep our passions within due bounds because our passions will be there. Just because we're Masons and we are trying to become more in tuned and more familiar with the circumspection and the control of our passions, it doesn't mean that they're not there. Our passions are there. What we do with them, it's what will set us apart as Masons. So I'm sure there's some hot-headed people out there that might witness someone trying to violate their obligations or do something negative against the fraternity and might want to take matters into his own hands and actually inflict some sort of penalty, or so I think it's possible. I hope it isn't. I hope it doesn't happen, but I think it's possible anytime.
Robert?
Well, to me, it's kind of an interesting question, just because I think about it like in terms of the Masons out there listening to the show. if I said there's two words, and I won't put it in any kind of context other than saying accepted or accepted, what if that was misconstrued? And what if these guys took it that way? What if guys take it that way today? What if we don't take the time to explain it? And largely in part, I think about states like Minnesota where the ancient type penalties have been replaced with suspensions or in terms of things of that nature. And I think largely it probably wouldn't happen, but more not because of that, but probably because of I just don't think anybody cares. You've got lodges around the world who say there are no secrets in Masonry. The biggest secret is that there is no secrets and that all our ritual is written down in books. I don't think anybody cares enough. You have these lodges who are clandestine who go off and they decide to start spouting ritual in front of other people, in the public to test them. And these guys are the same people who tell me and everybody else to remember our oaths when we're being loud on Facebook. There's all kinds of things that are going on all over the place where the secrets are being just spilled and talked about, and it matters our obligation in that we said we would not release certain information that is given to us in the degrees, and I think largely we adhere to that, but there may be some guys out there who don't do it, and I don't think anybody cares. So I don't think anything.
It's a different time. I think I'll summarize that and say it is a different time now.
Yeah.
Jason, what are your thoughts?
Could this happen today? You look at the rampant violence that's happening, especially in this country today. Yes, absolutely.
It's crazy.
I mean, the fact of the matter is the screening process only works so well, and I could see an escalation of a scenario that crosses the point of no return, and blood is spilt because of it. That happens every single day. I'm not perhaps naive enough to think that there's nobody in this fraternity who would ever have that bad of a day for that to happen.
Well, Jason, people kill each other over TVs at Christmas time at Walmart, so imagine.
Yeah, and not trying to be Debbie Downer here.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yep. All right, Jason, do we have anything else for social media tonight? It's been pretty light. Because it's a free show.
Yeah, social media is light, so let's go to final thoughts.
Yay, Jason, final thoughts.
All right. So the story of William Morgan is rather interesting. It's unfortunately when you're a student of history, you suffer the innate limitations of historical knowledge, which are not enough information, incomplete information, and also there's a preponderance of information and too much information at the same time. And the fact of the matter is that at some point we just have to say, look, we'll never know what exactly unfolded, and unless we find some new primary source documentation that we can then cross-reference to other respected peer-reviewed sources. Right now, I just don't see that happening. So, did the Masons kill William Morgan? We don't know. Did the situation escalate to the point where that could have happened? Probably. Did the aftermath of the Anti-Masonic Party and the Anti-Masonic movement come directly out of the Morgan affair? Yes. So that's really, regardless of whether or not the facts were straight in the William Morgan affair, The fact of the matter is it left a very indelible mark on the face of the fraternity that is in decades and decades for the fraternity to recover from. I can only imagine what would happen today if the same thing took place.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Juan Sepulveda.
I do like what Jason is saying. There is a lot of information out there, but there's a clear message. We as individuals have the potential of creating great positive change or very tragic damage to the fraternity. And every time we sign a petition and we allow a new man to come into our fraternity, we are basically increasing the probability of either of those two things happening. Now it becomes our responsibility to make sure that these brothers are getting the necessary instruction so that they can go in the, in the former. They can actually be the positive change that we want to see in Masonry. So what I would say, we apologize if you were listening expecting to hear exactly what happened. Nobody has that information. Ideally, we'll get more information on it in the future and share it with you. But it's an entertaining story nonetheless, and it has a ton of information in it that is, inspiring, and sometimes it teaches us something. So if you have anything that we missed that you thought was important that we discussed, make sure to go to our Facebook page and continue the conversation there. Ask the proper questions and share your ideas of what might have happened. Maybe we can start our own conspiracies and muddy the water even further.
Nice.
But to conclude, it reminds me of one of the things that Brother Chris Hodop said in the last episode of The Winding Stairs, is that one man can really make a change in the fraternity. And I wanted to publicly thank you, John, for taking the time to come on The Winding Stairs and sharing some insightful information. So for the brothers that haven't heard it yet, thewindingstairs.com, episode 37. Drinking from the fire hose.
Great job on that episode, by the way. It was, I don't give false praise. That was sounded like a documentary. It was like listening to like the best NPR episode I've ever heard. So you did an excellent job in post production, Juan.
Thank you,
Robert Johnson.
Oh, I have to agree. Juan, fantastic job on that episode. It was really good. The first time you did something like that was your Halloween episode where you interviewed the lady at the hotel.
Right.
And fantastic episode. Really loved it. So anybody out there, really, you gotta check out this latest episode and your trailer, if you will, for the episode is just brilliant. So thanks for that.
That was fun. Thank you.
The Morgan affair. This is there's a reason why I'm going last night. It's because I'm going to tell you all something huge, big secret. The whole thing's false. Nothing ever happened, ever. No, that's just the way Arkansas handles things.
Oh.
So, just kidding. Or not. So, yeah, one man can't change the fraternity, and in this case, that one man was Morgan, and he really messed things up. For whatever reason, maybe Masons messed it up, or because they took him out, or maybe he messed up because he left and framed the fraternity for everything and walked out free and scot-free with money, fame, and everything else. I think he probably some fatal accident had befallen him, and he took off, and he probably was taken out somewhere. I think he was probably murdered by several people. I couldn't say if there were Masons or not. There's probably a slew of people involved, as with any conspiracy. It was an interesting episode because we don't have this is not philosophical interpretations of ideas. This is not a critical examination of how we handle things like dues or structures or positions in lodges. This was probably the first time we've done an episode where we're handling things like historical stuff that has completely open-ended end. But it was fun. So thanks for watching. If you like Masonic podcasts, please check out Whence Came You, Sunday nights, 9:30. And that's all I got. So thanks.
Thank you, Robert. So now for the epilogue. Here's the sad part. Despite all the conspiracy, he still got his book published. That's right. You can find, if you search around hard enough, Morgan's Exposé of Freemasonry, as written by, not published by, because he didn't stick around to see what happened. But I mean, when you have enough people that you're allies with in the printing of this, often one guy can still result in what you don't want to happen. And this exposé did go out, which led to the anti-Masonic movement as well. So he goes into quite a bit. I don't know what's going on with the goat on the front, but
I'm just going to ask, if you go to the next page, I'm just curious what's the copyright date on that and why it's $1, and I'm just curious what that is today. Like, how much was he charging for that book?
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out as well. I'll do some research, throw that in the show notes as well.
He wasn't charging anything for that book.
You're right.
He personally, right.
Yeah.
But despite our best efforts, still got out. So careful what you do. That's all I got. Good show, guys, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.